Welcome to Let's Talk About It. I'm Sheena.
And I'm Tamara.
And today we're talking about nosy relatives, more specifically to do with nosy relatives in relationships. So this is where relatives come and mess in your relationship than actually with things that has nothing to do with it.
Mm-hmm. And if you're in a relationship like this, you know how difficult it is to deal with this because you love your loved one, but at the same time, you've got this third party that is making a relationship very difficult. And it's difficult to deal with that because they're close to your loved one.
Right, and if your loved one doesn't step up and actually make something happen, then you're stuck kind of in the middle between this person and your loved one, and often you're portrayed as the bad guy.
Sure. But, it's the kind of thing where, again, communication as a couple is highly important because the both of you need to understand that this is a problem and that it's something that can't continue.
All right, but you've got some research for us today.
Yeah, so what we're going to go through is the different ways in which relatives can interfere with relationships.
Ooh, is this like a how-to guide? Can I go mess with your relationship with your folks? No, wait, that's the wrong way around. Damn.
Okay, so the first way that a relative can put strain on a relationship is by putting unrealistic demands on your time and attention. So this is the kind of thing where, like, your mother, your father, a sibling, whoever it is, expects you to drop everything so that you can go help them.
So this is the needy relative who expects their time to be much more valuable than anybody else's time.
Exactly. They expect them to be the center of your universe.
And why is that unreasonable?
It's not. Who said it was unreasonable?
Unfortunately, this can be very difficult because people who prioritize themselves like this will get upset if you put boundaries in place.
They do. And it's one of these things where, as the family member, you start to feel guilty that you're saying no to your parent or whatever it is. And the thing is, people who do this, they kind of know. They're manipulating you, really.
They don't like to necessarily acknowledge that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very difficult situation.
Yeah. And now, like, the problem with a relative doing this to you is that this leaves you with very little time to focus not only just on yourself, but on your partner and your relationship. So what happens when we're supposed to go out on a date, let's say, and your mother phones up saying, oh no, she made dinner, you need to come over. And now you're like, oh no, we need to go to my mom because she made dinner, I feel guilty, she went to all that trouble.
You're right, the guilting is a natural for this kind of person.
Yeah, and then it also can be to a point of view where you're just like, well, what's wrong with you? My mom went to all this trouble, why don't you want to go to dinner? You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like...
Which is unreasonable, especially if you and your partner had something planned, or if you spend an exorbitant amount of time with this other person.
I think what a lot of this will come down to is that your relationship is made up of two people. Not 3, not 4, not 10, 2 people.
And here we're not talking about polyamorous couples and that kind of thing, because
True.
because that's a whole different relationship level and that's different navigation, and there's nothing wrong with that. We're just talking about the duo here.
Okay, yeah, and if you are a throuple or more, then we're talking about the 3 or 4 people in that relationship.
Right.
Those are the people who matter in the relationship, not anyone outside of that relationship. Okay.
Absolutely.
I think also important to take note is that in this podcast, we're not talking about abusive relationships.
Not at all.
Because you definitely need family to interfere when it's an abusive relationship.
You need help.
Yes.
As much help as you can get. You
Okay.
need to get out of that relationship.
Yeah, we were talking here about your bog standard happy relationship that may go through some ups and downs, but overall it's healthy.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So what other kinds of family interference do you have? Because I see you've got like a list there.
I've got a huge list. This is my pile of papers. The next one is that you feel responsible for your relative's emotional well-being. Okay? And I think this actually extends to not even just emotional well-being, but also just well-being in general. Like, you expect if that person's not doing financially well, you feel responsible. And this, is like you need to make sure that your parent's always happy, that your sibling has money this week to pay rent, or whatever it is.
So your single parent raised you with this thing of it's us against the world, and now you're grown up, and now your parents alone because you've moved out of the house, and your parent doesn't quite know how to deal with this, and so there's this feeling that you are responsible, you are the second person in this relationship with your parent, if you like, and you have to set the boundary there.
Yeah, because it's very toxic. I mean, as a child or relative to someone else, that person is not your responsibility. Their decisions and the outcome of those decisions is not your responsibility. Again, your responsibility is the relationship that you're currently in.
And I can speak from experience that this is a difficult road to navigate.
No, it really, really is.
And it's not that I have any family members that are particularly like trying to interfere, whatever it is. I just personally take on the responsibilities of everyone, and it's so damaging to me. And you see the turmoil it causes and the tax it takes on me, and it's like I only have a certain number of emotional points, if you like, in any given day, and I use up way too many of those on family scenarios where I actually have no control of anything.
That's, I think, very important to remember. You have no control over other people's actions.
Yes.
And keep that in mind.
Family members' decisions is on them,
Yes.
not on you.
Yeah.
And it's not your job to fix them. Okay.
So the next one is you lie to your parents or your relatives to avoid disappointing them.
Ooh, this is a tough one too, hey?
No, it is, because sometimes it's easier to lie or not to mention something because, it's just simpler.
But where do you draw the line, and how do you know? Because surely you can't just spill the beans about how terrible your life is all the time if that's what's going on.
But it doesn't even have to be about something terrible. It could be that you're gay and you lie to your parents about it. You just don't tell them. And you're putting their well-being before yours.
I see. So and your girlfriend is actually not your roommate.
Yeah, so
okay.
You go over for Christmas dinner and it's like, I'm here with my friend Angie instead of I'm here with my girlfriend Angie.
So tomorrow, do we need to have a conversation about Angie?
Angie does not exist. Okay. This is one of those things where their disapproval, their disappointment is, again, more important than your own feelings. And that's not healthy.
These are tough lessons to learn as you grow up, eh?
And sometimes it can even be as simple as you decide that you don't want to study law, for example, and instead you want to study theatre. I know that's not quite relationship advice, but again, it's something where you just go along with what your parent wants because they're your parent, and how can you ever do something that they don't agree with?
So this is the coasting kids sort of scenario. You just don't. And if I were a parent, I can tell you straight off, I would not want a relationship in which my kid felt that they had to lie to me.
I mean, and then when it becomes into a relationship, you start oh, let's not tell mom that we're going to go to the Bahamas for a holiday because she hates the Bahamas. So the next time you see her, it's oh no, we're not going away. And then, you build this little house of cards of lies and then she'll phone you to find out she can come to dinner. And meanwhile, you're on the way to the airport and...
Yeah, a lot of these are hitting home. I'll just be straight up with you.
Not intentionally. No, seriously not. Okay.
No, and I believe you. I'm just, I just have complicated relationships with my family.
The next one is relying on your parents for money.
I think this is so easy to do. Our parents grew up in a generation where money was easier to come by for them. And so they probably have paid off houses, or at least close to being paid off. They have more general accumulation of wealth. And it's tough to live in the world these days.
But the problem with relying on your parents for money is that you're an adult and you're in a relationship with another adult, and it's not fair to firstly discuss your private finances with someone else. And secondly, you're kind of negating the other person in the relationship by letting someone else step in. And you also, because you're now taking money from someone else, there's also all these expectations. So now it's oh, mom wants us to go to dinner with her, so let's not go on our date. And you're well, she gave us money, so I feel like I have to go to dinner and not go on a date.
It's skewing the relationship.
Yeah.
And it's not allowing you the independence you actually need in order for your relationship to flourish.
Yes. So, I mean, just, again, the relationship is about the people in the relationship, and you shouldn't be transferring that power to someone outside of it.
Okay.
The next one is sort of similar to the money one, but it's you're allowing your parents to handle your responsibilities. Okay, so this can be anything from allowing your parents to deal with getting your car serviced to always being there to take care of the kids when you need to go out. Whatever it is, that you're like relying on them and you're not allowing yourself to be an adult, really.
I think something like babysitting the kids is mutually beneficial. You have to weigh that one up on an individual sort of basis.
Oh, sure, but I think it's the kind of thing where, again, once in a while it's fine. If it's a regular thing and it, again, creates some sort of imbalance of power, it's not okay.
I suppose it also depends, though, entirely on how it affects the relationship.
Yes.
So
completely. I mean, maybe that was a poor example, but okay, for example, your parent weekly comes into your house and drops off groceries. Firstly, it's not groceries that you put a list together of. They're coming into your house willy-nilly. How do you handle that?
Okay.
And it might be okay for you as the child or the relative, but it might be very uncomfortable for your spouse or spouses.
No, I get that. I think grandkids are a different sort of a thing. I think if you have a healthy relationship with your folks and they can have a healthy relationship with their grandchildren, I think it's really important to have that extended family for the kids.
And I think that's always important. I just think it's one of those things where it can be taken advantage of in both directions. Like your parents are not free childcare, but also like you need to let your children deal with their children because they chose to have those children. So
yes, but having a stable relationship with your grandparents is key to being able to form relationships that are healthy in the long term. I don't know. I have a close relationship with my grandparents, so for me, it's like 100%. A no-brainer.
I'm not saying that that's bad, not at all. And I think you should see your grandparents as much as you can. But what I'm talking about here is people overstepping boundaries.
Okay.
All right. So the next one is when your parents expect you to check in with them before you make a decision.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Like, you know, that codependency thing where even though you're an adult, your bond is so tight that you speak about everything and anything. And sometimes you might even speak to them before you even speak to your partner. Okay, so when you're in a relationship with another person, you're going to be making big decisions such as buying a house, choosing where to live. It can be even deciding whether you're going to go onto birth control or something like that. And that's the kind of stuff that you should be discussing with your partner, and that's the person you should be making the decision with. It shouldn't be with the relative or your parent. The thing there is that your parent would also give their thoughts on it or give their ideas on what you should be doing, and that's sometimes not, you know, what your partner wants to do. So it should be something that you guys agree on together. Okay, the next one is when your parent violates your privacy by looking at text, emails, financial records, that kind of thing.
I don't think it's ever okay for a parent to violate your privacy, even when you're a teenager. I think the only maybe circumstance is if you think that your child is in trouble, on drugs or something like that. But even then, it concerns me that parents think that it's okay to read their kids' journals and texts and that kind of thing.
Yeah. I think, you know, also something worth noting is social media in this day and age. And if your parents are stalking you on social media, like it's okay if they come across a post and they like it or whatever. But, you know, if they're constantly stalking you, so they're using it as a way of keeping track, it becomes a problem. You're not a teenager. You're not a child. Like, you're living your life. You don't need to have...
It's okay to not be friends with your mother on Facebook.
Or any relative, really.
Yes.
You're listening to The Lesbian Talk Show. TheLesbianTalkShow.com, your hub of podcast information.
Another way that tension can be brought into relationship with relatives is when you feel like there's competition between you and the relative. Okay, so this is where, like, you know, whether it's feelings or accomplishments or that kind of thing, you always feel like there's a competition. So, you know, I bought a car, now my dad goes and buys a car. I buy a couch, now my aunt goes and buys a couch, or whatever it is, you know, that kind of thing.
Or if a parent says to you, oh, I can't believe you went and did that because that was what I wanted to do. As if you can't both do something.
Exactly. Or I cut myself badly this week, and then it's like, oh, you won't believe, like, how I'm almost dying or something, Everything has to be one-upped. That can cause like a lot of issues because there will be a lot of jealousy created in a relationship. There can be a lot of jealousy developed, frustration over having to, maybe because you've been brought up this way, you also feel like you have to keep up and you have to keep one-upping.
Well, also, if your parents are like this and you're not inclined towards this, then what happens is you just start the thing where you just don't tell them stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you start lying.
And you start the lying cycle.
Yes.
And it's a really unhealthy space to be in.
Yes. And if you are the kind of person that's continually competing, then you've got your partner who has to deal with you using money or resources, whatever it is, to
keep up with the Joneses.
Keep up with it, yeah. Okay, the next one is your parents enabling your bad or irresponsible behavior.
Okay.
So this is them, again, treating you like a child, like a spoiled child, and just indulging you in doing things that are not necessarily good for you.
I think parents sometimes do this as a really messed up way of showing that they care.
Mm-hmm.
But it actually just hurts ultimately.
No, it does. So it's, things like, your job is difficult, just quit and I'll give you money every month. Or, I don't want to see you driving that perfectly fine car. I'd rather see you driving an SUV. Here's an SUV. Could even be things that it's not about buying stuff, but just indulging people.
Well, if you know that your child has a penchant for throwing away perfectly good relationships because of some strange personality quirk, like your kid decides that her girlfriend is the worst person in the world because her girlfriend doesn't like cats, or whatever it is.
Exactly, yes.
And then you indulge that, you're not actually doing your kid any favors.
Yeah, or even things like, as an adult, like your child joins a volunteer organization and then it just feels like too much work and you're like, it's okay if you quit. That kind of a thing.
Yeah, encouraging yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a kind of thing where this becomes a problem, especially when your relationship, because it might be fighting with your partner's values. So, if you both decided to volunteer at an organization and now your parents allow you to quit and your partner is left with like, what? Like, I thought this was something that was important to you. It's important to me. How can you just quit?
Yeah, there's deeper issues in that relationship.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. And then the last one is your parents overshare personal details about their own lives.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And this is important because you are the child.
Yes.
Whether you're grown up or not, you are the child. And there shouldn't be inappropriate communication going on. And especially when you're in a relationship, you shouldn't be communicating to other people this kind of stuff.
Yes, I never ever want to know about my parents' sex life.
Yeah. And I think in some of these cases, it's also where, because they're oversharing, they expect you to overshare.
The problem comes in, say you fight with your spouse every now and then, and you start sharing those details with your family, then all your family hears is that you're in this terrible relationship with you fighting with your spouse. When in fact it could be that you're fighting with your spouse
You talk about fighting once in a blue moon, but the only thing they ever hear is fighting.
Right. And so because you're sharing inappropriate details with your family, it comes across as your spouse is bad guy.
Yes, exactly. So there's a couple of ways that you can deal with this.
Okay. Illuminate us.
Okay.
Because I'm starting to feel really miserable about my relationships right now.
It's basically all about the big B.
The big B?
The big B.
Is that for boob?
Yes, totally big boobs. The bigger the better. The relationship.
That's hilarious. Okay, so what is the B?
Okay, the big B is boundaries. Shocking, I know.
I should have seen that coming. Okay.
Okay, so it's basically about establishing boundaries with your relatives so that you can focus on your relationships. So the first thing is presenting a united front. And this is about you and your partner discussing and communicating and then presenting a united front about whatever the problem is. Okay. So, for example, the mother who is always inviting herself over or who is always expecting you to come to her. Okay. So your partner has told you, listen, this is making me feel really crappy. It feels like you don't pay attention to me. It feels like you don't value our relationship. I need us to not drop everything for your mother.
Okay.
Okay. So the united front is now that we've both agreed that this can't go on. That yes, we can see my mother every now and then, but we're cutting it down to maybe twice a month. Whatever it is.
We're actually quite good at this, you and I.
Alright. So we've decided what the boundary is, and now we're going to implement it. So the next time the mother phones, we will say, "Oh, thank you for making dinner, but we can't make it. We can do it on
A predetermined
Saturday,
date.
whenever.
Okay.
Tonight we're going on a date." Okay. And then the mother's all disappointed and she's sad and whatever, so she phones the partner and trying to guilt the partner now. And the partner says the exact same thing. Okay. So it's a united front. You don't change your decision based on who's talking to her.
It's also a good parenting technique.
It is. It's true.
You have to parent your parents sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. The next one is letting the blood relative be the person who's the messenger when you need to deliver some sort of news or some sort of boundary.
So, for example, if I have an issue with your mother, then it's your job to deal with that.
No.
No?
No, it's not about your personal issue with my mother. It's about our relationship issue with my mother. If you get annoyed because my mother does something which irritates you, that's not this.
Just for the record, I really like Tamara's mother and she doesn't irritate me at all.
No, my mother also doesn't drop by randomly. It has to be an issue that's about the relationship and is causing the relationship damage. So, for example, financial. So, your parent is saying that, "Oh, let's go on a joint family trip to Mexico." Initially, it would be the kind of thing we would do, except that this would always put us in financial stress.
Right.
Okay. So, again, we have a united front. We've decided we're not doing this. Okay, but it's for me to go to my parents and say, "Listen, we cannot do the Mexico trip. We cannot afford it. No, thank you. I don't want your money."
It's better to do it that way because then you're not making the spouse the bad guy.
Exactly, because it's not about you not wanting to go. You know what I mean? Because then it is this whole thing about the spouse being the bad person.
So I have a question.
Yes.
So what if the blood relative is a wuss and doesn't want to deal with stuff?
Well, then, this is the problem. The blood relative not dealing with this is what causes the relationship to suffer. You have to do something. It's kind of like, we spoke about these codependency issues, like people accepting money, people telling everything to their parents. That's something they do already, and that's what's causing the issue.
Okay.
They're going to have to, fight really hard to stop doing that. It's not going to be easy.
Okay. It's not an easy conversation
No,
to have,
but
but it's an important one.
It's basically, do you value your relationship or do you value your relative's relationship more? And I know that sounds hard and harsh, but the thing is, your relatives are going to love you no matter what. Seriously. Even if they're disappointed, they're going to get over it in 24 hours, I promise you. But your relationship with your spouse is something that you have to work on.
And your last tip for dealing with these unwanted disturbances in a relationship?
Okay, this is one we've actually kind of covered already, and that is not talking about your spouse to your relatives.
Unless you're singing praises, I think it's a good rule of thumb. And here's the thing, right? So you go through difficult times in your relationship. It's just how it is. You go through difficult times in all relationships.
Yeah.
No relationships are perfect. You and I have fought. But if I end up talking to people about every time we fight because it's weighing on me or whatever it is, then you just come across as like this horrible person all the time.
And the thing is, in the hands of a certain kind of person, that also becomes ammo to drive a wedge between you. And you don't want it to become a them versus her situation.
So who do you talk to?
You talk to probably, if you have a close actually, I don't even know if I would talk to a friend about it because it creates the same issue, Probably a therapist or something would be the best thing. I mean, if it's
Somebody's actually trained to help.
Yes, because if it's a relationship issue, that's probably your best bet, because anyone who's close to you in a personal capacity is going to have the same problem. They will see that person in different lights and they will just stop liking that person or whatever.
Also skew. They also love you, and so their viewpoint is skewed by their love for you.
Yes.
So they're going to naturally think that the other person is
always wrong.
the bad guy.
Yes. And I mean, like, the thing is, people always need to vent, but I think relationships are the kind of thing where it's a serious matter. And if you're having a problem that's big enough that you need to share it with someone else, I think maybe you need to be speaking to someone who is educated on the matter and that can actually help you.
Well, this was a really epic podcast.
It was much longer than I thought it was going to be.
I think that's all for this week. If you have questions or if you want to know anything specific about relationships, now's the time to email us on podcast@thelesbiantalkshow.com, because we're going to do a special episode where we answer listener questions. So ask us anything about relationships and we'll do our best to answer.
In the meantime, please go and like and share this podcast on Apple Podcasts. Your 5-star review helps other people find us. You can also chat with us on our Facebook group, the Lesbian Talk Show chat group.
And if you like this podcast and the other podcasts on the channel, become a patron. You get exclusive content, you help us grow, and you help keep us on the air.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.